When I worked at McKinsey, we followed a very specific process to build new presentation documents. And based on my humble experience, most people outside of professional services, in industry and so on, they do not fully understand how that works. So let me show you in today's video. So welcome to another coffee break here on my channel Firm Learning. My name is Heinrich and let's get right in. And the typical problem that I often see people do is that someone tasks them to create a presentation. Your supervisor, your leadership, your team lead asks you to build a deck around something, and then this person takes the task with him or her, spends a week on it, and then after a week comes back with a perfectly polished document, and then the team lead looks at it and realizes this is actually not at all what I needed, not at all what I wanted, right? And this is of course super frustrating for everybody because you will spend a week of your life which you will never get back, and of course for your team lead this will be rather frustrating as well. So let's start with one little tip, one little thing that we did in consulting at McKinsey, and of course other companies like BCG, Bain adopt this principle as well to do that. And this is that when we started a presentation, we always started with a sketch. So we would literally take a piece of paper like this and we would draw some type of basic grid. Some basic grid structure like this, depending on how many pages you might need, you make them finer or wider. And then you just start sketching out the individual pages on such a grid on a piece of paper. And typically we would start with writing what is called an action title. So if you don't know what an action title is, I have other videos on that in the channel. I will link some above. So just to get clarity on the messaging. And then it would also already start to roughly sketch out how this slide is supposed to look like. Ideally with a finer pen than that, but I trust you get the idea. So here maybe then you have some type of chart that you want to include. Then you might provide here some type of commentary. Here it's also helpful to maybe already write at least some of the key bullets, some of the key things that you actually want to share. You might have some table structures that then you explain. So some logic like this, where you sketch out the full presentation, ideally with a bit more detail, how I now did it in a quick way. So you should already write at least the essence of the titles, and you should also already write a little bit of text to provide a rough overview of what this is about. And then what you actually do with this is that you take this to your team lead, right? To take this with you, and then you have a conversation around such a page with your supervisor, with your team lead. You might also want to do it on like a digital whiteboard type solution if you're all working remotely. And then you have the opportunity to, together with your team lead, review and align and improve these types of things. Often you will see that the other person also takes a pen, starts drawing as well, and then together you will improve this rough outline. And this is actually also often a great way of working with you. Typically it's enjoyable for both sides. And if you then take such an aligned version of a document with you and then go home, work on it for a week, then the chances of success are far higher. But now, of course, you need to do just that. Now you need to work on these individual pages and make sure that you put them to life in a great and effective way. And so I want to now discuss and review with you the slide creation process. What are the actual steps that we followed to create a high quality slide output in the end? And what is the first step? I challenge you to now think about this for yourself for a moment, pause the video. What is the first thing you need to do when creating a slide? And it indeed is getting clarity on the messaging. You need to ask yourself what you actually want to say with the slide. And this is a very common mistake I see people do. They just look at what slides do they already have, maybe created in the past, copy paste a few of them together, and then don't really think about the whole flow. But you should do it the other way around. Always first start with what you want to say. And now if you look at a stylized illustrative slide, where this actually comes to life is the so-called action title. So you write the key messaging in the action title. This is the first thing you should do when writing a slide. So here, for instance, let's say we are looking into buying another company when you are ready to present a purchase price offer for that. So we write something like, for company X, Y, Z, we are able to pay whatever, 100 million euro, dollar, whatever, in form of an asset deal. And now we have the messaging of the slide clear. And now we know that we need to build something that actually supports this messaging. And so now the next step in the slide creation process is that we need to decide the structure. So what is the structure of the page? Right? What are the elements that we want to include? What are the main building block? And then on the slide, this typically translates to the layout. So what is the layout that we want to build here? And now based on this example, for instance, we might say, so it's an asset deal, so we are pricing the individual assets. We might say that first we create some type of structure for the different assets, right? And so what is the typical structure logic for assets? Now, I'm not a finance person, right? But it's probably something like current assets and fixed assets. I don't know, maybe we even make it like this. And I think there are also intangible assets and so on, but you get the idea. And then based on this, we actually list the assets, right? So we know that now we need a column for the layout where we want to list the individual assets that are coming into effect here. So there are 4 assets here, and then also a few of these fixed assets. And then maybe you even want to write down some details, right? If you're here naming the assets, then you want to provide a little bit of commentary description. So what are these assets all about? What exactly are you buying here? And so on. And then we want to also include the purchase price offer for the individual assets, which then sums up to a total. So this is now the overall structure, which often then translates into a layout for such a page. So this is the second step, getting clarity on the structure. And indeed, when building the page, we would now start putting together these building blocks, these rough elements that structure the page. Then next is, let's say, some graphics, the main visual elements. Graphics or main visuals. And these might be pictures. Very often in these more consulting type slides, it's actually the charts. It's the data visualizations. And here now for the purchase price, we might want to consider to maybe include a waterfall chart. Right? So here for every individual asset that we are distinguishing here, we are adding an element to the waterfall, indicating how much we are willing to pay for this specific asset, given that this is here an asset deal. And then here we have the total amount, the total purchase price, which we are willing and able to pay. And this, of course, then adds up to the 100 million. So this is then the total. Now, indeed, you have the purchasing price, the main visual, the graphical element that we included here on the page. And now step 4, the next page, and this is support. Now what are the supporting elements, the supporting text? This is the mainly about indeed the text. Right? Now filling out all these individual bullets that you want to write. And now here with assets, now we'll not now write this here in detail, of course. You might buy some cash, you might buy some machines and so on. I spare you all of this, but this is now where you actually fill the slide with all the content that you want to fill. And then the last step here in the process is what is called polishing. So for the polishing, you look at the alignment. Is everything aligned? You do some quality checks, are all the footnotes ready and so on. And this is actually something that's very, very important. What in professional services is taken very, very seriously. And so based on that, based on my humble experience having worked at McKinsey, I created a slide checklist for you. A free checklist that you can download. I will put a link in the video description where you can download this checklist, including lots of things that I put together back in the day when I was doing this myself, that you can use just to do the polishing and make sure that you don't have any errors left. So free download, feel free to access it in the video description. And so if you took any value out of this video at all, please hit the like button, subscribe to stay up to date on all my content. Big thanks to all the channel members. I'm Heinrich and see you soon again here on the channel.